I'd like to bring up, once again, our series builds an opportunity for you to stand here and sit here and hear from these candidates. Matt is going to spend a great amount of time sharing his vision for the Senate, and then you're going to have an opportunity right here, when we're done, to walk up and share a question and provide a question to Matt that he'll gladly answer. So get tuned up, and here we go. State Senator Matt Dolan.
Thank you, Shannon. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. What a great turnout for a Wednesday night. Look, I'm going to do something you probably shouldn't do if you're talking to a group and you want ultimately their support. I'm going to make you feel a little uncomfortable. And I'm going to piggyback on the mayor's conversation, because everything he said about issue 1 is correct. In fact, I literally just got off the floor of the Senate, drove here, and I had to listen to 6 Democrats talk about why they are supporting Senate bill or issue 1. And it would turn your stomach if you heard what they said in the Senate floor. But everyone here clapped. Everyone here agrees. So I'm going to ask every one of you to be uncomfortable the next 30 days and go out and talk to people who don't agree with you. Because that's how we're going to win this. Because no matter what, and if you listen to the video that Governor DeWine put out today, he talked about this issue isn't pro-life, pro-choice. This issue is about killing babies the day before they're born. You tell me anyone who's for that. And that's the message we have to get out. Talk to your neighbor, talk to your fellow churchgoers, talk to your employees, talk to your fellow workers. Have that conversation. Do not let issue 1 be just about women's reproductive rights. It's not. We can have that conversation. In fact, we should have that conversation. But that's not what issue 1 is. So it's not enough just to clap with each other. We all have a responsibility to do the work the next 30 days, be uncomfortable, have that conversation, and make sure there's a no vote on issue 1. So I am running for the United States Senate, and I've had the great honor of serving Strongsville in the state Senate since 2017. And you're going to hear a little bit about me, but what I try to do, and whether it was in my private sector or public sector, is I try to make sure that each and every day I am making Ohioans' lives better. And I do that by getting things done. Whether it's in the private sector or the public sector, you get things done to make life easier. And ultimately, I'm going up against Sherrod Brown. And let's face it, for the last 40 years, he's made Ohio's lives harder. And it's time Sherrod Brown goes. Because I want every one of you looking out in this audience, I want you to believe, and some of you lived it, I want your kids to believe, I want your grandkids to believe that the American dream in this country is alive and well and available to everyone. And I know, because I stand before you as a product of the American dream. You see, my dad's dad died when he was 12 years old. He was the youngest of 4 boys. His 3 older brothers either went into the military or got jobs to help pay for the family. My dad happened to be a pretty good athlete. So he got a football scholarship to the University of Notre Dame, and he was able to go to college. Now he got there and he realized, boy, these guys are bigger, faster, stronger than I am. I better come up with a new way of making a living. And he graduated from undergrad and law school in 5.5 years, and then joined the United States Marines. Then my mom's a little different story. She went to high school in Florida, and she finished #1 in her high school class. Now imagine you're the guidance counselor at that high school. And Eva Haas, the #1 student in the class, walks in and says, next year, I'm going to go join a Mary Knoll convent and become a Catholic nun. And she did. And my mom was a nun for 18 months. Now, fortunately for my 5 brothers and sisters and I, she did not take her final vows. She left the convent, finished a degree, became an elementary school teacher. Now, as fate have it, they met. And then when my dad was discharged from the Marines, they joined a 2-person law firm in Chardon, Ohio. And together they raised 6 kids, They built that law firm into one of the better law firms in northeastern Ohio, and they got involved in several businesses. And yes, they achieved tremendous financial success. But that's not what my mom would want me to be talking about. That's not what my brothers and sisters would want me to be talking about. Because they know I was raised in a family of faith, hard work, and sense of community. And it's those three principles that I have taken into my own life. And I hope now as an adult, I am providing that for my two sons, Sam and Maddox, along with my wife, Jessica. But I brought that to heart. It's particularly that sense of community. Because when I finished law school, I joined the Attorney General's office. And some of you might remember Operation Crackdown, the first in the state. And what we did is I rode with the SWAT teams in urban cities around the state, and we closed down crack cocaine houses. And I worked with those SWAT officers, and we would come up early in the morning, and we'd all be decked out in our helmets and our clever jackets, and we'd rush up to the house, and all the SWAT guys would run out to the left towards the house, and the lawyer and me would run to the right and hide behind the wheel until they told me it was all clear. And I took that and I joined the prosecutor's office. And unlike prosecutors today, I actually prosecuted criminals, murderers, rapists, robbers, drug dealers, put them in jail, worked again shoulder to shoulder with law enforcement, and understood how hard and dangerous their job is. And understand when you sit across the table from a victim or a victim's family and you talk about seeking justice, you understand that's not a campaign slogan. That's healing. And you better follow through with that. And I understand what it means to serve the public, and I joined a private law firm, worked really hard, had the great honor of joining my brother and my dad in several of the businesses, and again, it was part of that success. But again, that sense of community. So I ran for the House in 2005, and I served until 2010, and as I said, I've had the great honor of serving Strongsville in the state Senate since 2017 to today. And why I went down to Columbus is what I wanted to talk to you about. But I have to take a little aside here, because I see some friends in the audience here, and I'm going to pick on one, your mayor. Because the mayor will tell me all the time, man, you don't talk enough. You don't tell anybody what you're doing down there. No one really knows what you're doing and how good you are. Well, let me just tell you another story about my family. Remember that my grandfather, who I never met, died when my dad was 12? Well, he received the Silver Star, the third highest honor you can receive in the United States military, and the second highest honor you can receive from the French government for his heroics. 4 days in the French countryside in May of 1919 in World War I. I'm 58 years old. I didn't know that until I was 46. I tell you that because I was raised in a family of doers, not talkers. If something needed to be done, you did it. When you were done with that, you didn't beat your chest and talk about it, you did the next thing. But I want to represent you in Washington, and I know that of the three of us who are going to stand before you, both are good guys, but I am the best one to go to Washington and execute on your behalf and get things done. Because in Columbus, I took my private sector experience and went to Columbus and worked on it, and I got conservative speakers and conservative presidents appoint me the finance chair 4 times. And in that time, your taxes in the state of Ohio went from 7.2% to 3.5%. There were 9 brackets in this state. We're down to 2 now over the course of my 4 budgets. We're on pace to cut state regulations by 30%. And yeah, we worked hard. We heard Beverly before talk about, she kind of mentioned it, there's some things creeping into the schools. Well, it's more than creeping in other places around the state. What the teachers union, what the left wants to teach our kids. You know the best way to deal with that is not just beat your chest and talk about it, is to give you, the parents, the role, the responsibility to decide where and how your kids are going to be educated. And that's why in Ohio, I'm proud to say, after years of fight, we have universal school choice here in Ohio. Parents are going to take control of their school. Now, I know there's going to be some questions about budgets and things. Well, that costs money, folks. That costs money. But every single one of my budgets is balanced because we never spend more than the revenues that we bring in, and we are strategic in where we spend our money. and we're spending money on universal school choice, and we're spending money on public education, because that is what the state government's supposed to do. But we also, there's no one else on this stage who's going to be able to say they have taken on the problems of this state, the problems that the left is bringing to us. How many here want to save women's sports? I can tell you what, I am the only one in this race who's voted to save women's sports. We got it done. How many of you like ESG funding, environmental social governance? Well, my committee led the charge in Ohio that you cannot do ESG funding in Ohio with public funds. These are things that you don't just talk about and get people mad, and you walk home and you're mad about everything the left is doing. You need to send somebody like me to Washington to stop what the left is doing, because we're doing it here in Ohio. I hear my opponents talk all the time. We're going to shut down the Department of Education in Washington. Well, we can talk about that, but what's happening now in our own state of what the Department of Education is doing to us? So what did I do? I joined with Senator Matt Huffman, and we moved the Department of Education back into a cabinet position, so it's now under the control of the governor and not the bureaucrats in the ODE. Again, this is what you want. You want somebody that goes and does things. And when I do things, it's with the purpose of making us all feel secure. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want to feel secure. We want to have economic security. We want to have neighborhood security. We want to know we can go to the soccer game tonight. I know Strongsville's got a big soccer game. That it's safe to do that. We want national security. We want to know that our nation is standing proud in the world and protecting us from enemies. That's what we want. But for the last 40 years, we have been represented by somebody in Washington, in Sherrod Brown, who has been doing nothing but pursuing an agenda of vulnerability. And when he is successful with his agenda, America is weak. And when America is weak, individuals are not able to exercise and live their best life. And it's not ending. Just in the last 3 years alone, he has voted with Joe Biden 98.5% of the time. Now, some of you are going to say, all right, wait a second. We're all Republicans here. What's the big deal? Democrat senator, Democrat president, they vote alike. That may be right. Let's look at what those votes have done. Those votes have led us to record inflation. Go to the grocery store. Those votes have led us to when we were just 3 short years ago, we were energy independent. That is, not only were we able to provide energy for ourselves, we were exporting energy out to our allies. Yet Joe Biden and Sherrod Brown on day one stopped that. Not only did they stop the flow of oil, they stopped the jobs that are associated with that, but also, guess who we get our oil and gas from now? Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and yes, even Russia. Even Russia. That has got to end. Joe Biden and Sherrod Brown are okay if China just leisurely strolls across our countryside, soaking up all our secrets, buying our farmlands right next to military establishments, and they do nothing. They're more worried about pronouns than what we're learning in schools. And we're seeing it today. What the tragedy that's happening in Israel is real. But don't think for 1 second that those terrorists, those butchers, did not look across that pond and ocean and say, America right now is weak. Because Joe Biden withdrew out of Afghanistan horribly. Because Joe Biden was willing to give Iran $6 billion. Because Joe Biden was willing to cut off American oil to allow Iraqi oil to get out over the last 3 years, $60 billion worth of profit Iranians have enjoyed. Why? Because the sanctions that we put in place under President Trump are not being enforced. He has expressed weakness, and we are vulnerable as a result. And so I know what my charge is. I know what you want. We got to take Sherrod Brown out. And Shannon, thanks for giving us a little extra time, because we're going to talk a little politics here. Every one of us is going to say, oh, I can beat Sherrod Brown. I can beat Sherrod Brown. Well, I know I can beat Sherrod Brown. let's just talk facts here. The winner of the Republican primary is going to win in about 79 counties in this state. The winner of the U.S. Senate race is who can do better in those 9 remaining counties. And yes, we are in ground zero for one of those counties, Cuyahoga County. If you look at what Sherrod Brown has done in his last 3 elections to go to the United States Senate on behalf of Ohio, it is because he gets about 70% of the vote here in Cuyahoga County. I am the only one in this race that's been on the ballot with President Trump, and I outperformed him by 11 points, which means those very voters that might otherwise vote for Sherrod Brown are looking to me. I was in a race with 6 other guys in this race, 5 other guys, and 2 of them were Democrats, and I got 33% in a 6-person race in this county. I can go right after the votes that Sherrod Brown absolutely needs to win in this state. And I can tell you my opponents can't do that. There are more registered independents in this state than there are Democrats and Republicans combined. So I know what we're looking for in this primary. You want somebody to carry that flag. You want somebody with conservative principles, beliefs, and ideas to go to Washington. But I add one more thing to that. I can go to Washington and execute. I can execute on making sure that we can bring back sound fiscal policy. I can execute that we get inflation under control, that we re-engage our workers and we become energy independent again, that we stand strong up to China, that we stand strong up to Iran, that we make certain that our students in schools are learning what they need to learn to be successful, that we secure our border. And let me just say a little bit about that. I've been down to the border. Maybe some of you have seen the commercials. You know, it is worse than you think it is. It is worse than you think it is. But it's even more frustrating because this is something we can solve. And let's face it, Republicans in Washington should have done a better job in solving this because President Trump put a plan in place. It was working. We did not put it into law. We have control of the House right now. Why haven't they introduced a bill to show the American people how that border could be secure? It's not just enough to talk about it and make you mad, folks. You gotta execute. Because if we send Sherrod Brown back, we're not getting any execution. Because I can tell you this. Last December, I'm just sitting in home reading the newspaper and Meet the Press was on. I had no idea Sherrod Brown was going to be on it, but he was. And the topic was border security and immigration. And I heard our U.S. Senator say when he travels the state of Ohio, he doesn't hear anything about immigration or border security, except from the far right. He is politicizing one of the most economic security crisis we have in this country. And there's not a chance in this world that this problem is going to be resolved if we aren't even willing to recognize the problem even exists. But I can tell you this, I'll tell you this. He didn't travel the same state of Ohio that I've been traveling, because if he has, he would have met Rich in Geauga County or Joe in Salem, Ohio, and they tell horrendous stories about their daughter and their son who met the final outcome with fentanyl and died. And talk to the sheriffs and the police chiefs around this state. I guarantee you Sherrod Brown has it, and they will tell you it's coming over in record amounts. Not just fentanyl, but human trafficking. It's real, it's here, and it must be stopped. And that's why of the 27 Republican county sheriffs who have endorsed in this race, 25 of them have endorsed me for the United States Senate because they know I'm a law and order guy, and they know I get things done. All right, well, I'm looking forward to your questions, but we can really boil this down to 3 things. This race is about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Because I'm going to go to Washington and fight for life, the sanctity of life, for our soldiers' lives, our law enforcement's lives. And those liberties, those ideas, those values that we share as Republicans, but we also share as Americans, We're going to make sure we create a culture that those are not just talked about, but flourished, that you feel the freedom to express your ideas. And I'm going to go back to what the Founding Fathers meant when they talked about pursuit of happiness. What they meant was, as individuals, Americans would be the strongest people on earth. And the only thing that's going to stop them is themselves. That they can pursue their own happiness free from government restraint and control. This is what this election is about. Regaining control of our individual lives with our individual power, with our individual prosperity, and we will then make Americans feel secure. And when Americans feel secure, Americans are strong. And when America is strong, that American dream that we all want for our kids and our grandkids, not only will be known, it will be real, and it will happen again. Please, give me the chance. I can beat Sherrod Brown, but why I'm doing this? Because I want to go to Washington, get things done, and make your life better each and every day. Thank you for your time. I look forward to your questions.
Great, thank you, Matt. Okay, so the ground rules are this. Please line up right here if you'd like to ask a question. Just come on over. Simple request on our part, normal decorum, questions only. If you're going to have a statement, I'm going to cut you off. So you're going to ask a question, and let's make sure that we have a short question, if at all possible. Let's go the line straight down this way so that everyone can see. All right, there we go. First up is...
What are your thoughts on spending more money, specifically $50 to $100 billion, that would carry Ukraine through the next U.S. election?
I assume everybody heard the question. I think the question's on Ukraine. Ukraine is a national security interest for the Americans. Right now, if you know any farmers, and we're not a farming community here in Cuyahoga County, but you go outside of Cuyahoga County, farmers are feeling it because most of the fertilizer that they need for their crops comes from Ukraine. Ukraine controls 25% of the world's wheat. If Russia takes over Ukraine or has parts of Ukraine, they not only control fertilizer, they control food. They're going to put tanks on the Polish border if they are successful. What do you think Putin's going to do with those tanks? He's going to threaten our allies. And what do you think he's going to threaten them with? Maybe not invasion, but you better start buying your gas and oil from us and not the United States when we come. And there's a guy over in China, he's watching what we do, and if he doesn't see any consequences to going in, we're gonna have a battle over there that's gonna be entirely different for Americans. I don't like the way Joe Biden is prosecuting this war. I would have done it differently. I would have said early on, what is our mission? To me, the mission is to get it back to the 2022 boundary lines, and then what ammunition and weapons you need to accomplish that goal. Folks, this is difficult, I get it, but we want to be a leader in this world. We want to not have a vacuum of us receiving to be filled by China. And I won't go into it, but pay attention to what's happening in Africa. Pay attention to what's happening in South America. And if you think for 1 minute, that vacuum of power isn't going to be filled in Eastern Europe, you don't know history. And finally, I'm going to ask you this. We all agree Putin didn't do this when Trump was there, right? Because Trump was strong. Because Putin felt threatened, right? Well, why in the world do you think Trump was strong? Because he understood that Putin being in Ukraine is a national security interest to America. I am not going to roll over now.
Recently, there was a continued resolution to fund the government without any border security attached to it. The representative we put in there in the Senate voted for it. We vote constantly for Republicans to stand up for us. They get to Washington and they don't. McCarthy, against the House Republicans, agreed to it. Matt Getz held them to it. But there was 210 Republicans, including our own representative, who voted with McCarthy. How do we know we vote someone in that they don't turn around and not vote for our values?
Well, I'm going to talk about the first part. The second part, it's easy. I'm the only one of the three of us who has a record that you can look to. And you will see I have been transparent. I don't intend to think that you guys have liked everything I've done in my term of public service, but you know what I've done. So I have been consistent. And what you've seen me do in Columbus, I want to do in Washington. And I have fought Democrats and I have fought Republicans to get things done in Columbus, and I would do the same. Now, let's just talk about one thing we missed last week. You know, again, border money. Yeah, I was a little like, oof, do we really want to put more money into a program that we know is not working? So it bothered me that we were kind of fighting for more money. I would have rather seen us put up a policy and say, we're going to change the policy. We can do it with the money we got, but we're going to change the policy. Just saying more money to a bad program didn't seem to make sense for me. The other thing that bothered me is, look, we are spending, last fiscal year in the federal government, we spent $1.5 trillion more than our revenues brought in. And the Democratic-led Senate passed a continuing resolution, with zero spending cuts. Zero. Now the House, they ultimately did try to pass something with 30% spending cuts. But some Republicans didn't vote for that, and they joined a lot of Democrats, and we didn't. So instead of the discussion being, Democrats are spending $1.5 trillion more than our revenues, and they're not willing to cut anything, and Republicans are recognizing we got a border problem, and we need to stop spending so much money in Washington. That's what the conversation should have been. Now it's something else. And whether you agree or disagree, or the guy's doing a good job or bad job, again, as Republicans, we've missed an opportunity to talk about what we believe in. And that would have been, you know, I got interviewed. They said, I don't want a government shutdown. But if we aren't going to get the Democrats to control their spending, we need a government shutdown. And we missed the opportunity to have that conversation.
So many people have tried but failed to beat Sherrod Brown. Why are you the best candidate to beat Sherrod Brown?
So everybody heard the question? Sherrod Brown's never faced anybody like me, and partly because of what I talked about, the geographics, I'm going to do very well in the 5 largest counties in the state. I did very well in the primary last time in those counties, and there's even more Republicans coming out in presidential primaries. But the reality is the last 2 races particularly, we've gone after Sherrod Brown personally. And he may have some flaws, I have some flaws, we all have some flaws. But what he's good at is constituent service. And you guys are here on a Wednesday night, and you're enthusiastic, and you know the issues, you know what you want from me, you know we got to defeat issue 1. Most people who are going to vote are at the soccer games tonight in Strongsville. They're not paying attention. So imagine if you get a letter from your U.S. Senator because you got named Rotarian of the Week, and you get a letter on glossy stationery from the U.S. Senate, Sherrod Brown, saying, great job, you're awesome, you know, keep up the great work. You think that's pretty cool. And then you see a commercial about going after that guy personally. And you think, oh, well, he seems like a nice guy to me. I'm going after Sherrod Brown's record. Sherrod Brown talks one way in Ohio, and he votes another way in Washington. Sherrod Brown is voting against tax cuts. He's voted for 3 tax increases just in the last 3 years. 2 times in the last 2 years, he's voted against stricter border patrol. He wants to pack the Supreme Court. He wants to end the filibuster. And yes, he has voted against saving a baby who's born after a botched abortion. He's voted against giving that baby medical assistance. This guy is way out of touch with Ohio. And someone like me can go to Ohioans, and I'm making the pitch to you tonight that my record is a strong conservative record, but I've also done things that help everyday Ohioans, help the working guy, help them get through their lives each and every day, to give them that economic security. So on the campaign trail, when Chair Brown wants to talk about the working man, I can say, no, you have hurt the working man. You have caused inflation. This is what I've done. You've got to make this this race about a vision. Where do we want to go as this country? I got a 22 and a 20-year-old kid. Kids, I want them to have the America that we all know. And it ain't going to happen if Sheriff Brown's there. And all we have to do is show what he does in Washington, and you'll see it. And everybody else will see it.
I'm a retired teacher, and if Governor DeWine has disbanded the State Board of Education and made one person on a cabinet position, does that stop the person from his appointment to the STRS board? And does that then change the balance of power on the STRS board?
So no. So the person who would be brought in as the head of education would remain on the STRS board. So there would be no changes. All the same players would be on that. That is and that is a separate board. So they make their own decisions on that one. So that wouldn't.
Are you aware of what's going on with
I'm aware of what people are saying is going on. But this thing's got to play out. I mean, right now we're in everyone's throwing bombs. There's a lawsuit. You know, the reality, folks, is you want your representatives, the first question, to say up here what they're going to do and go do it. Now, a lot of times, maybe we do. But we pass legislation, then we go home, and we turn it over to the bureaucrats. And if they don't like what we did, they don't enforce it. And that's what we were seeing in the Department of Education. That your responsibility is to execute on what the legislature, is acting upon. Not delay it, not stall it, not change it. And all of that was happening. So we brought it back. All the ancillary things around it are all in the bill. But right now there's a lawsuit and everyone's throwing out all kinds of allegations. Let it play out.
Okay, thank you.
When you stood before Strongsville GOP and said that you endorsed AOC's Green New Deal. So my question is, do you still endorse the Green New Deal?
I never endorsed the Green New Deal.
So you're saying that I'm lying? Because we heard
I don't know you're saying you're lying, you're misinformed. So, look, there's an issue with last time with the infrastructure bill. Now, at the time of the infrastructure bill, we didn't control anything as Republicans. But I know this, one of the best pillars for a strong economic environment is low taxes, less regulations, good workforce, infrastructure. And for too long, at the federal government, we have done nothing. Now up here, you might wonder why we did it. It was Rob Portman who negotiated it. It wasn't a perfect bill. A lot of things in there I didn't like. But if you come from Southwest Ohio, and everybody been down there and go over the Brent Spence Bridge, and for years, people knew it needed to be fixed. And for years, nothing got done. And if you want to go and say you're going to represent Ohio, and you want to help people in Toledo, because you talk to businessmen in Toledo, and they say, I can't get my product through Cincinnati because the traffic is so bad because of that bridge. We have a Cincinnati folk, she's shaking her head. So yeah, there were things in that infrastructure bill I didn't like. So if the parts of the Green New Deal were in there, I didn't vote for it, but I said I support infrastructure in this country because it's good for economic activity. I am not for AOC's, whatever her Green New Deal thing is.
Hello, Senator Dolan. So, you claim that the United States' involvement with the Ukraine war is in the interest of national security. So my question for you is, why do you have a parasocial relationship with imperialism, and why do you believe that the free nation of the United States needs to become the world's police?
Because if we don't exercise our military and economic strength in this world, it'll be filled by people who don't like us. We are unique in this world, folks. We are unique. We are a republic democracy. And most of the world is not. Most of the world is under a government where individuals cannot thrive, cannot succeed. And if we want to have trading partners, if we want to know that people aren't going to be abused, we have got to be strong in this world. And all the atrocities that you're turning on your TV and hearing about these brutal Hamas and Iran-backed Hamas, Putin is doing the same thing to Ukrainians. So we have a responsibility in this to be the leader in this world.
You made the comment about, I don't remember 2012, but I remember 2018, about the election being about personal issues. Brown made it about Renace's taxes. Renace made it about Sherrod Brown being a wife beater. You're absolutely correct. It needs to be challenged on the issues and the direction. That race should have been about boards, and the job losses there, and that issue was missed hugely by the Republicans. What's the issue to go after him now? Is it all the holes in Dodd-Frank for potential banking crisis we have? What's that issue?
Well, thanks for the question. So when you get down to a campaign, you got to simplify it. The issues are always going to be the same. Your economic status. Do you feel secure? Is this a country that's making us a better place to create jobs, to start a business? Do you feel secure in your retirement? Do you feel safe in your neighborhood? Do you think that we know who's coming into our country? Do we know what's coming into our country? Do we think we have a plan for that? These are all the things that I'm going to lay at the feet of Sherrod Brown. To Dodd-Frank, yeah, there'll be some bankers you'll talk to, and you'll talk about that. But at the end of the day, is America better off with Sherrod Brown? Is Ohio better off with Sherrod Brown? And look at some of the things that I've done to make Ohio better. Let's do that in Washington. Let's hold his feet. There's a laundry list of votes that this guy had, that if he was standing up here, you guys would be blown away. You need to know that. Independents need to know that. And hell, even some Democrats need to know what that guy does in Washington.
Hi, I'm Scott. I just one quick question. Who are you personally going to support in the presidential primary?
I don't know yet. I want to make sure that somebody that is talking about tomorrow, talking about the issues that I want to go to Washington and act. Are we going to do things? And can they win? So I don't know yet.
You made a lot of nice accolades about President Trump and how his policies to secure the border and stuff. Why wouldn't you support President Trump?
If President Trump starts talking about the Trump presidency and things he wants to return to, that would catch my attention. I haven't eliminated Trump. I just want to hear that we aren't going to look backwards anymore, that we're going to go address the issues that are impacting our country.
Do you believe that the 2020 election was fair and there wasn't any fraud?
I believe Biden won the 2020 election, and we need to move on from it.
Okay.
Okay, Matt, seeing no other, we've decided Strongsville GOP, this seems like a very silly question. I'm sure it'll be very easy for you to answer. But we've determined that we need to ask every candidate that comes on stage for this primary election one simple question. So I'm sorry you're the first guinea pig to hear our simple question, but could you describe a scenario, if you're elected U.S. Senator, where you would partner with Chuck Schumer and the Democrats to choose a leader of the Senate?
No.
And the reason I ask that is because, as we all know, our state representative Tom Patton did just that here in Ohio. He partnered with the Democrats to choose the leader of the House. And I want to make absolutely certain that every candidate that comes on our stage demonstrates to us that the Republican Party is the party they belong to and the only party they belong to when choosing leadership for their body. And I wanted to verify with you that question, and I appreciate your answer. Is there anything you'd like to share about that topic and what's happening in Ohio?
What's happening in Ohio?
As it relates to the work that happened with the 22 Republicans that decided to do a partnership with the Democrats.
No, that's an issue in the House. Let them fight that out.
Would you agree with what they did?
I know there's a lot more to that decision than probably people know. But look, I have to deal with whoever's over there, and I'll deal with whoever's over there. But should they have worked it out better? Yeah, but they didn't. So we got to deal with it.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Great. Everyone, thank you so much.
When is the debate? Are you gonna debate? When are you gonna debate?
So we have a number of forums before the new year. I think all the debates are scheduled after the new year.
It's not scheduled yet.
Yeah.
They'll be after the new year.
Okay, is there any other questions before we close tonight?
Yes,
All right, we do.
Hold on. I think we need to announce, when is the primary? It's March.
March 19th.
Okay.
Yep. Primary will be March 19th. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Matt.
Strongsville.